So the United States and its closest allies, the Four Eyes, not the Five Eyes, but the Four Eyes, have said they will be boycotting the Beijing Winter Olympics. Let me just show you very quickly how they announced this, right?
The Biden administration will not send any diplomatic or official representation to the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics and Paralympic Games, given the PRC's ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang and other.
Here's Boris Johnson.
The government has no hesitation in raising these issues with China, as I did with President Xi the last time I talked to him, and there will be effectively a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. No ministers are expected to attend.
Here's Canada.
In conversation with partners and allies around the world on the issue of the Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Games. As a country, indeed, as many partners around the world, we are extremely concerned by the repeated human rights violations by the Chinese government.
Here's Australia.
Xinjiang and the many other issues that Australia has on those have not been received well in China, and there's been a disagreement between us on those matters. But of course the human rights abuses in Xinjiang and the many other issues that Australia has consistently raised. So it is not surprising, therefore.
The human rights abuses, right? That's the reason they're giving. So the UK, the US, Australia, Canada, they don't want to send any diplomats. They will be sending athletes, but not diplomats. No official delegation to China because of the human rights abuses, okay? So you can see also here, this is an article from the BBC about this. They say the same thing, right? So basically that the venue for the 2022 Winter Olympics has been hit by a flurry of diplomatic boycotts from countries including the US, Australia, and Britain because of widespread allegations of Chinese atrocities against the Uyghur community. So let me get this straight. The same exact countries who invaded Iraq, who invaded Afghanistan, who have started a war on terror for, what is it? It's been going on for 20 years now, right? Just over 20 years. Have been killing Muslims in God knows how many countries, are suddenly concerned about Muslims in China. Wow. Wow. So now the United States cares about Muslims all of a sudden. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that absolutely incredible? You know, when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State and she was visiting China, asking them to buy debt, she sure didn't care much about their human rights abuses, right? Now, granted, back then, the more prominent issues that they were raising were Tibet. They were also talking a bit about Taiwan. They weren't talking about Uyghurs as much as they are now. But they didn't seem to mind any of that. I want to play you a clip of Hillary Clinton in 2009. Look at how she speaks.
All are testaments to China's dynamism and growth, and the United States welcomes this. We welcome China's role in promoting peace and stability in the Asian Pacific. Over the past 30 years, the United States has helped.
That's a very different tune from what they're saying now. Just 3 months ago, they formed this military alliance called AUKUS, right? Australia, the UK, and the US, because they're afraid of China destabilizing the Indo-Pacific. That's not what Hillary Clinton just said, right? You heard what she just said.
And growth, and the United States welcomes this. We welcome China's role in promoting peace and stability in the Asian Pacific.
She sounds very different from Blinken.
That's why there's so much concern from Northeast Asia to Southeast Asia and from the Mekong River to the Pacific Islands about Beijing's aggressive actions.
So what's changed? What has changed exactly from 2009 to 2021? Because as I said, some of these issues which they raised today, they say, China and Tibet, China and Hong Kong, China and Taiwan, China and the Uyghurs. These issues that they're raising, they were mentioning them in passing back then, but they didn't consider it a roadblock. They weren't going to boycott China. Hillary Clinton went to China. She was begging them to buy U.S. debt. Right? And now the United States, which does this to Muslims, is pretending to care about Muslims. You know, I interviewed someone who was in Guantanamo Bay. for 14 years from Yemen. They kidnapped him when he was 18. Some Afghan warlord kidnapped him, handed him over to the CIA. Of course, he's done nothing in his life. And they whisked him off to Guantanamo Bay and locked him up there for 14 years. Mansour al-Daifi. I asked him a question. I asked him, what do all the inmates in Guantanamo Bay have in common with each other? What's the one common denominator between everyone who's detained there? You're just Muslim.
Yeah, I mean, yes, like all of us were Muslims. Like, as I told you, 50 nationalities, 20 years spoken, all of us were Muslims.
So the only common denominator between all these people who are locked up in Guantanamo Bay, I mean, look like animals. Worse, I mean, you shouldn't treat animals like that anyway, but for the expression's sake, treat it like, just look at that. They can't hear anything, they can't see anything, they can't move. And they're all Muslim. That's the only thing they all have in common. They are Muslim. Held without charge, held without trial. And now the United States pretends that it cares about Muslims. There's a Senate report, there's a report from Congress that came out that said the United States has used the AOMF, the Authorization for the Use of Military Force of 2001, which started the invasion of Afghanistan, which started the war on terror. They've used that AOMF to bomb 19 countries. 19 countries, right, under this war on terror. Who are the primary victims of this war? They are civilians and they are Muslims. So the United States has killed, Jesus Christ, I don't know how many. I mean, look at Iraq. Just Iraq, right? They invaded Iraq in 2003. Even the conservative estimates, which, is really, you have to be naive to believe that. But even the conservative estimates, it's about 100,000, 200,000 dead Iraqis. The real figure is it's over 1 million, because you cannot just look at the U.S. invasion on it as an isolated incident. This is ignorant. This is just completely disconnected from reality. You have to look at the casualties from the U.S. invasion, the sectarian violence, which the United States helped create, which the United States gave rise to, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. This is all a direct result of the invasion. We're talking about 1 million plus Iraqis killed and millions more turned into refugees. Millions. And now the United States, this is just Iraq. I haven't even talked about Afghanistan. I haven't even talked about Libya. I haven't even talked about Syria. I haven't even talked about, how they help Israel attack Iran, which is not an Arab, but a Muslim country. I haven't even talked about any of the other places. Yemen, again, 50 nationalities, all Muslim men. Just in Iraq alone, they've killed 1 million Muslims. Of course, Iraq also has Christians, just like I'm Syrian Christian. But they've killed so many people, the majority of them, Muslims and civilians. And now they're coming along and saying China it's committing heinous acts against Muslims, and we have to take a stand now and draw a line in the sand. Who are you? If there's going to be one country that takes up such a position, I really think the United States is at the bottom of the list. Of such countries. You really have no moral high ground to stand on here and start criticizing China for mistreating Muslims. Are you serious? What a joke. I mean, when it comes out of the mouths of a country, of an alliance of countries, the UK, the US, Australia, Canada, the same countries who have sent their forces to land, to invade, to kill, to slaughter, to imprison predominantly Muslim civilians all over the world. This has no value coming out of your mouth. It's disgusting hypocrisy of the highest order. So you know that they don't actually mean it. They mean it because of their history, because of their hypocrites. And the most important thing here also is that they didn't have a problem with any of these so-called human rights abuses 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You know why? Because China was in line back then. China wasn't getting out of line. China didn't seem like an economic threat. And again, I don't like using this word threat because in their mind, in their capitalist, imperialist mind, it's a threat because it's a competition. But it's not actually a threat. China doesn't have fleets of warships off the coast of Florida. It's the United States that has fleets of warships off the coast of China, right? It's the United States, the UK, the US who just formed a military alliance to come in and threaten and antagonize China in China's backyard. Not the other way around. But nevertheless, back then China, was definitely one of the fastest growing economy in the world, but nowhere near the same kind of so-called threat economically, militarily that it is today. And again, it's not really a threat. It's just it poses a a challenge, an ideological challenge, a political challenge to Western imperialism, to Western neoliberalism. And so they view it as a threat. And now all of a sudden they care about China's human rights abuses. I mean, what a joke. What a joke. Here's another example of how much the United States cares about Muslims. So much, right? This is an article from the New York Times from just last week. The headline reads, "No U.S. troops will be punished for deadly Kabul strike." The military initially defended the strike, which killed 10 civilians, including 7 children, but ultimately called it a tragic mistake. So you remember when the U.S. drone striked ISIS-K terrorists? For weeks, they kept up this lie. At the end of August, when they were leaving Afghanistan, they launched a drone strike and said they killed a bunch of ISIS-K terrorists. They lied about it. And if the New York Times and other media, for once they did their job, but if they hadn't called out the Pentagon, they hadn't called out the DOD, they hadn't called out the U.S. military for lying, they would have never admitted to it. They never killed any terrorists. They killed an entire family, the Ahmadi family, because they thought that some bottles of water were explosives. It's incredible. They're so high up in the air, they can see that they can see explosives being passed from one, from a pair of hands to the other, but they can't see the civilians standing around when they launch the missile. How convenient. How convenient. And so, of course, no one is punished for that. None of the military personnel involved in a botched drone strike in Kabul that killed 10 civilians will face any kind of punishment, the Pentagon said on Monday. There are people who get fired for a lot less. Some people misplace files, they come to work late, they get fired. But you can kill people in the U.S. military, you won't get fired. Even if it's a mistake, it's botched. You notice the language, how everything is botched? Everything America does, which ends up killing Muslims, is always botched. It's always erroneous. It's always a mistake. America never commits any acts of violence. It's always mistakes. America's pure. America is the best. The West is the best. The U.S., the U.K., Canada, Australia, they never kill Muslims on purpose. It's always botched. It's always a mistake. Oops, sorry. We're not going to do anything about it. And over and over and over again. This is not an isolated incident. Get that clear. Get that clear. This is regular. This is the status quo. This is what the whole war on terror has been. Okay, so they've been killing Muslims. They would kill hundreds of people in Pakistan or Afghanistan with drone strikes just to get one person, for example. Just to get one person. And again, who gave the U.S. the right to go halfway across the world and kill someone? What is that? They think other countries are their backyard, but they would kill hundreds of people. They drone strike funerals. They even killed people at funerals. And then they lie about it, just like they lied here. They claimed, it's ISIS-K terrorists. And back then they would say, it's the Pakistani Taliban. And here's the regular Taliban. Turns out they're just killing civilians, right? 90% of them are civilians, as Daniel Hale revealed. That's how much the U.S. cares so much about Muslims, right? That's how much the U.S., the U.K., Australia, Canada, they love Muslims. And that's why they're taking a firm stance now against China.